Hi everyone, welcome to Unreal Specialization Week 4. This week we've got a pretty short and sweet tutorial, and I'm going to try just go through it live with no planning, so we'll see how it goes. But this week we're just going through how to set up a few more interactions and trigger animation sequences through Blueprint, because that's something that we didn't cover in week 2. And I just thought it'd be worth setting up a few things that you might want to bring into your own environments that you're going to start designing from next week onwards. So first off, I've got a third-person character in this scene. Now, I'm going to try and provide this for you to import, but we'll go through how to actually set up a third-person character properly in weeks following. If you want, just for now, you can just use the first-person controller that we have been using and just add like a cylinder body or something like that, like so. And then to convert it to a third-person controller, all we need to do is add in a spring arm. And this is like an arm that the camera will attach to. So we'll drop that in there, and then we'll place the camera inside the spring arm, and you'll see that snapped to the end here. And then now your camera will sit on that spring arm and kind of automatically follow the camera or the character around. But I'm not going to do that. I've got my own animated character set up, which I'll upload, and you should be able to import from Canvas as well. So this is what the scene looks like. We've got our lovely animated character here, and we can walk around. Got a nice little strut, and we've got some sprint as well. We've got a different speed for our sprint. And then the character's going to walk up here, and there's one of his mates saying, "Get me 3 plonkos and I'll consider letting you in." Now, plonkos don't exist yet, so we're going to have to set that up. But I think what we'll do is we'll have one sort of cutscene that as we walk up to this character, it changes the angle that we're viewing the scene from, and we can kind of go into like a first-person perspective there. And then we will leave, we'll go and collect some plonkos that will appear. And then when we collect all the 3 plonkos, it'll open up this chamber in here, and we'll be able to go and look what's in there. These are some assets that I'm developing for the Dark Forest project, so that's why they've got this kind of look, but I thought it'd be nice to do something that's a bit different from the photorealistic sort of high fidelity looks that we've been trying to develop, although these do look pretty nice if I do say so myself. Right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is have a cutscene that kind of triggers when we walk up here. So what I'm going to do is create a new trigger in the environment here. So we'll come up here and we will search for trigger, and then we'll drop in a trigger box, and we'll just position that somewhere here. Maybe we can put it a bit earlier, so somewhere like that. So we'll make that a bit bigger, and just somewhere where as we walk up the hill, the player is going to walk into it. Okay, so why don't we rename that something like conversation cutscene trigger. Save that, and I'm just going to save all quickly. There we go. And so the next thing we're going to need to do is actually create our cutscene animation that we want. So I'm going to come up here and create a cinematic camera. Which we can go here, and we'll get a cine camera actor, drop that in. And I'll just make sure that that's facing the correct way, something like that. And that's looking good. We might just adjust some of the settings on this actor as well. So if we go to all here, got a 16:9 film. We're looking at like a 35mm. I might, yeah, maybe actually that's fine. We'll do a 35mm camera, but maybe we'll have some sort of zoom happen. So we'll just pull our camera back to our initial location here. This is going to be a very odd cinematic, but that's fine. So we'll select our first initial point, and then we're going to create a level sequence. So I'm going to create, I've got this sequences folders here, and we'll name this one conversation cinematic, save that. And then what we need to do, so we can see that that sequence has dropped into our level now. What we need to do is add in our camera actor. So what we'll do is, while we're now selecting our cinema camera actor, we'll come up here to this track button. So we're going to add a new track. We're going to hover over actor to sequence, and because we've got that cine camera actor selected here, that's come up as an option. So we'll click that. We've got our camera now imported into our sequence, and we can hit eject over here and stop piloting it. And then not sure how we can go back to it actually. Okay, so we can actually just tap this little button down here to switch back and forth from the camera. So we'll move it to our good sort of starting location, maybe something like this, where we see the whole building. And then we can come down here and we can add in on the transform track, and maybe I'll just make this a little bit bigger so we have some more space. There's this keyframe button here under transform, and we can go ahead and add a new key. And then we can move forward. So this is 2 seconds. We can move forward something like this. Drop in another key. And then maybe we'll move forward another, just a touch, and zoom in a little bit more. Something like that. So let's just play that back and have a look. So we're going to fly in. And then we're going to stop at that point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm using Control and scroll here to zoom out a bit. I might just increase this length, and just so we have a bit more time at that position. So there's time for the player to kind of read what they're doing there. So I'm going to just drag that point forward in time. So that's looking good. Let's play that back again. Maybe we'll increase this speed a little bit. So we're going to fire off, and then get me 3 plonkers and I'll consider letting you in. And then we're going to end. Okay, so that's pretty simple. We've just got this one camera. We could add in extra cameras here, and then we could have them sort of cut between them as well. So that's an option. But for now, we'll just go with this simple setup. And I'm going to eject my camera now. So you'll notice, though, if we go ahead and just play, even though we've got that sequence in there, it's not really kicking off. What we can do is come over to our cinematic and press autoplay. And now let's see. So now our game is just starting with that cinematic. And then once it's finished, it'll snap back to our camera. So that's cool. That's a really easy way to have like that contextual cinematic shot. But what we actually want to do is trigger this when we walk into our cube here. And maybe I'll move our trigger cube a little bit. Let's see, where is it? Conversational cutscene trigger. Cool. Let's move it over here instead. Great. So what I'm going to do is open up the level blueprint, which is when we come up here and click on this blueprint button here. And we're going to hit open level blueprint. And now we're getting like our entire a blueprint that's for the whole level. And the purpose of this sort of blueprint is really to just connect up other objects within our level. And you'll see how that kind of works in a sec. So what we can do is we'll delete the event begin play and everything there. We can come over and make sure we've got our trigger selected in our outliner. And then we'll come over back to our blueprint. And if we right click, you'll see at the top we've got this shortcut that says create a reference to conversation cutscene trigger. So if we click that, now we're referring to this specific trigger from our actual scene rather than a blueprint from our content browser. So now that we've brought in our cutscene trigger here, we've got a reference to that actor. We can also then find an event for that trigger. So we'll search event trigger, an overlap event. And we're going to find the add on actor begin overlap. So we've got that one there. So once we've pulled in our conversational cutscene trigger and we've created our on actor begin overlap, what we can do is then bring in a reference to our actual conversation cinematic here. So we'll just select that one again, and this is our actual sequence. And we'll come over to our level blueprint and we'll say create a reference to that cinematic. And then we'll drag off that pin and type in play sequence. And so now we've got this action, this function that we can trigger through our overlap. So we'll come over here and connect that up. And it just says when our conversation cutscene trigger is overlapped by something else, play this sequence. And so we can test that out. I did make the sequence a little bit bigger. So let's go try that out now. So we're walking and we walk into it. And I can actually still control my character there. But now you'll notice that if we go back into it, it's going to happen again. So there's two problems that have been kind of highlighted there. One, the trigger box remains present so that we actually still keep triggering that cinematic. So we probably only want that to happen once. So that's one problem. The other problem is that our character can still move. So what we might want to do is after we play, we're going to destroy the actor. So we'll search destroy actor and then we'll plug that in there. So it's just going to delete itself once it has finished playing. Okay, so it finishes playing. We walk up here, great. We come back down here. Yeah, we're no longer playing. So that's good. And then what we might want to do is add in at the start here something that will disable our third person character. So coming over to my third person character, what I've done is I've set up this little block input section, and this is just in my event graph. So all I did was I got my controller, so we'll say get controller, and we'll say set ignore, and we can choose the move input or the look input, so we'll choose move. I've created a variable here called input block, so it's just a bool that'll have a true or false value. By default it's false, and I've hooked that up to this input pin here. I could also have just right clicked here and said promote to variable. And then I'm updating that every frame. So what we can do is at the start here, we will break this connection. And the first thing we'll do is cast to our third person controller. And as our third person controller, we will set block to be true. And let me just give myself a bit more space here. Let's move that over. So we'll set that to be true. And then we'll play. And then once we've played and we've destroyed the actor, we will grab this again and say set. Maybe I can just do this. With that same target. And I'll come up here this time. I'm just going to create a reroute. And so we'll set this now to equal false, and I'll just hook that up there. So let's just test that out now. So we'll run up here, we'll hit our trigger. It doesn't look like it's working. I'm still able to move. So let's just see what's happening there. Okay, so I actually had it wrong. This execution will fire straight away. So it is destroying our actor straight away, but what it's destroying is our trigger box. And so our sequence keeps playing because the sequence still exists, but the trigger for the sequence is just immediately wiped out. So what we need to do is get when this finishes. So what we could probably do is maybe get the length, get the duration, right? And then we will create a delay. Duration will be the length of time of our sequence. And then once it's completed, then we will do the thing of setting our input block to be false. Okay, let's save that out. So now we're picking up when we trigger, when our character walks through the trigger box. At that time, we're going to set our character to not be able to move. We're then going to play a movie sequence. We're also going to, at the same time, destroy the cutscene trigger. And we're then delaying so that the next steps trigger after our sequence is finished playing. And then after those 7 seconds, we're then switching our character back to having no input block. Yep. There we go. Can't move. Cutscene plays. And after a second and a jump, then we can move again and we can walk up to this character. Alright, so that's how to do like a basic cutscene. Now what we want to do is trigger kind of a change in the level after we collect 3 plonkos. So what I'm going to do is come back to my event blueprint here, and let me just tighten this up a little bit. And we'll call this section cutscene, start cutscene. Cool, so that looks good. Now what we can do is also create a level variable, and we'll name this plonko count, and we'll make that as a type integer, and we'll just drop that in here. So here we're going to be checking what our plonko count is. By default, it's going to be, after I compile, 0, so that's good. And what we want to do is create a new function where we just check what this value equals. So we'll say if this equals, and we're just doing 2 equal signs, 3, then return to this branch true. And now we can like trigger the next action when we collect 3 plonkos. And then this will just be in like an update, a tick. So we're going to check this tick. Cool. So now all the time we're just checking what our plonko count is if it equals 3, then this will ring true through our branch, and then we'll be able to trigger the next action. So this will be our Plonko counter, and we'll compile that. The idea here is that kind of after we go and collect 3 of whatever these Plonkos are, this door will like drop down into the ground, and then we'll be able to enter this beautiful cave. Well, I shouldn't be showing you that. So let's set up that sequence quickly. So I'm going to close that one down and then create another level sequence. So we'll go add level sequence, and we'll call this one door move. And then again, we'll select our door, which is this one apparently, and we'll just name it cave door, and we'll add that one in. So we'll go with it selected, actor to sequencer, add cave door, and then we'll create some transform keyframes. So it's going to start here, and then it will, after maybe just 2 seconds, drop down. And then I think as well we should probably create another cinematic camera so that we're viewing that when it happens. So let's do that. So maybe this is good. So we'll add in our cinematic camera there. So that's this one. We'll add that actor in, and that'll just kind of cut to that. And then with our cave door, after 2 seconds, we will drop that down. So I forgot to actually create the keyframe. I'm just going to eject the camera for a sec. Don't need to mess with that. So we'll drop that down, and we'll add another keyframe. So that's going to just slide down, and maybe we'll make our character just sort of disappear or something like that as well. So let's grab our NPC somewhere here, and you can see this is just literally a duplicate of the character controller. So we'll add in our NPC, and maybe what can we track here? What could we do? Actor hidden in game. There we go. Visibility off. Cool. So that's looking good. I don't know why our cinematic camera actor seems to have like flipped around. Oh no, I just had the wrong thing selected. So that's how that's looking. What I'm going to do is also just drop the text. Oh, it is underneath. That's interesting. And we might just have to add both in here. So we'll say, with our text selected, add in the actor, and we'll just change the visibility to be false. Okay, cool. So it'll cut to this camera, and then this rock will drop down. Okay, great. So we've got that sequence set up now with the extra camera and the rock moving down. So we're going to leave that sequence now. And now we need to trigger that when we collect 3 Plonkos. So we'll come back to our Plonko counter here. We'll grab our cinematic here, which I've just lost again. That's here, door move. We'll create a reference, and we'll say play, sequence player, and we will play our door move sequence, and I'll just wrap that as well. Okay, so next up what we need to do is create our actual Plonkos, because we've got our sequence with the door opening and we've got that happening in our graph here. Now, one thing I realized is the Plonko count, we should actually just do that in our character controller. So we'll store all of the Plonkos that we've picked up in our character, and then we'll check that as a variable for us to then like open up and play this sequence. So for now, I'm just going to disconnect that branch, and we'll come over to our third person controller and we'll add in a new variable. We'll call it Plonko count. And you could also have this just be in like a management object that exists in your scene. The one thing you can't do is have that in the level blueprint because you can't cast to the level, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to store it in my character and make it public, and we'll compile and set that to 0. So that's looking good. And next we will go ahead and make our Plonko. So we're going to right click and create a new blueprint class of the actor variety. We'll call it Plonko. And I think a Plonko is going to have a static mesh. Yeah, so this is going to be the Plonk mesh. And that mesh will be one of our sort of blobby things. So we'll go and grab a blobby mesh, like so. And it's way too big. So I'm going to scale it right down to something like 0.05. You can play with that a little bit later. And I'll just give it a color. So I've got this like golden color. And maybe we could add like a light or something to it as well. And we'll just put the light above and give it a different color. So that's how that's looking. Just turn up our intensity and our attenuation a little bit here. No, we don't need that attenuation. Okay, cool. So that is what a Plonko looks like. So that's all well and good. What we need to do next is just select our Plonk mesh here, which has already got colliders generated, and just come down here to generate hit events and tick that on. And we're going to untick overlap events because overlaps occur when an object goes inside another one. So they're more like for triggers that don't actually block you, but you kind of pass through them. Whereas here we're going to like run into them and hit them. So we'll use a hit event and we'll save that. And we'll come over to our graph and just wipe it. And we'll start by calling a hit event. So we'll search event hit. And here we're going to cast to our third person controller. And then similar to what we've done in the past, we're going to add a number here. So as our third person controller, we're going to get the Plonko count. With that Plonko count, we're going to add, and I just input the plus symbol here. We'll add 1, and then we will set Plonko. I'm sorry, I need to drag off the third person controller. We'll set the Plonko count to equal that new value, and we'll trigger that here. So that's how that's looking. Hit compile. And then also, once we've done that, we're going to then destroy ourselves. Cool. Let's have a look at how that works. Oh, we just immediately triggered our cutscene there. I'm going to go back to our level graph and just see why that happens. Event, oh, because I just, it's true by default, and so that's just triggered that. Okay. So we should be good now. I'm just going to do a quick save all here. Let's hit play. And we actually forgot to put our Plonko in the scene. So let's do that. We'll go ahead and grab our blueprint Plonko, plonk it down. and it's over here. Oh yeah, the size looks alright, and we'll kind of collect that, and it gets destroyed. Now we didn't see anything happen except for it getting deleted. What we might want to do is also print the count to the screen, so we'll say print string, and then we'll just come here and get our Plonko and chuck it in there, Plonko count. Cool. And now it'll be a good chance for us to grab our Plonko and like make another one. So I'll have one on the hill over here, and then we'll just drop another one here, rotate that around, and maybe we'll place another one over here. Alright, let's have a look and see how that works. So we've got 1 Plonko, 2 Plonkos, run over here, 3, perfect. So we've picked up 3, and now we need to like trigger the animation after we pick up all of those. So what we can do is come back to our interactions tutorial blueprint here, so our Lovell blueprint, and what we'll do is we will cast to our third person controller, and there's probably other ways to do this that are a bit less expensive, but it's going to be fine. And we're going to get our Plonko count, and with our Plonko count, I'm just going to delete this comment here, it's a bit in the way. There we go, just organizing things. So with our Plonko count, we will check if it's equaling something. And so what we did there was drag off our third person controller, and we got our Plonko, and we're going to plug that in at the top here. And I'll just do it again so you can see. So we'll drag off our Plonko count that we're getting every second. We'll check if it's equal to something. That something will be 3. And here we could also do like a equals or more, in case there was like a chance that we could go over the value. And we'll check if it equals 3. And if so, it'll be true. So we'll say condition, and then we'll connect this up here. So every tick, we're checking our third person controller to see if our Plonko count is 3, and if it does become 3, then we're going to play our sequence. And then if we do play our sequence, we're then going to set the Plonko count to be back to 0, so we don't just keep setting the sequence. So set Plonko to be 0. That way we should avoid a loop. What's going wrong there? Oh, we're just missing which one. So let's go player pawn and try that now. Okay, there we go. So we'll do the same thing here, and we'll set Plonko to equal 0. Great, let's test that out now. So we're going to go here and get 1, run around here, get 2, run around here, pick up the final 1, the door opens. Looks like our length of the sequence is a bit long there. But you'll notice that like after it finishes playing, everything kind of resets back to normal. So we just need to adjust that in our sequence settings as well. So the final thing we need to do to get our sequence sort of saving its state in the world is to actually do that exact thing and kind of adjust a few settings in here in our sequence. So we'll come over to our door move, and this is most important for like physical things that are happening. And so we'll open up that level sequence, And what you just need to change is, one, I just changed the length of my sequence by grabbing the camera cuts here. But I came down to my cave door here, the actual 3D object where we've got this transform happening. And if you right click on the track itself in the timeline and choose properties, and then come over to our when finished section here, we can choose to either keep its state or restore its state or use the project default. By default, it's restore state. So you just need to check keep state for the things that you want to keep. So for me, it was to keep the rock in its final state, and also coming down to my NPC here. So this is like the visibility on off of my character. Just right clicking that track, as well as the text renderer, and choosing that keep state option here as when finished. So with that set up, you just need to save your sequence and you should be good to go. So we can test that out now. So we'll run over here. We'll go talk to this guy. One thing I just noticed for the first time, actually, and I'll just quickly show you, on our cinematic, there's actually an option here to block our movement input. So potentially didn't have to do any of the casting to our character, but at least you know how to do that. So now we can walk up here, like we can't get in. That looks interesting. It says, give me 3 plonkos and I'll consider letting you in. We go, oh, well, there's these things around. Maybe these are plonkos. And we go pick them up. I've got the first one on screen. And if you enter game mode, you won't see this debug log come up, but it's the second. And here's the third one. Our cutscene triggers. And we know now we can go in here. Great. So that'll do it for today. I just wanted to show how to use triggers and sequences and kind of how to link up our variables in-game to trigger these different events and interactions that you could have happening. And you can even develop like massive master sequences that have level sequences inside them and have multiple sort of states for your world. But it's a really easy way to start building these kind of storytelling interactions into your environments. This is your final tutorial for your weekly experiment, so just have a go at creating some interesting sequences and thinking of how you might trigger those through your blueprints. And yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone's folios look like. Thank you.